Disappearances are among the most unsettling mysteries that confront families, communities, and investigators. In many cases, when someone goes missing, the story concludes with silence. No trace of their whereabouts, no answers about what happened, and only grief left behind. Families often struggle through years of uncertainty, holding vigils, filing reports, and clinging to fragile hope while gradually preparing themselves for the likelihood that their loved one will never return. Closure, when it comes, is often tied to finality, a body discovered or a tragedy confirmed. Yet, in rare and baffling situations, the narrative shifts completely. These are the cases where individuals not only vanish but later reappear, sometimes decades later, alive but carrying with them deep mysteries that remain unresolved. And among these rare stories of disappearance and return, the first case takes us to Romania, where a man named Vasile Gorgos vanished in 1991, only to reappear 3 decades later.
Every case holds secrets. Some are solved, but many remain lost in time. When the evidence fades, we open the true cold files.
In 1991, 63-year-old Vasile, also known as Vasile Gorgos, was living in eastern Romania. He was a cattle farmer and trader, a man whose livelihood often required regular trips away from home. These business journeys had become routine, and while his family was accustomed to his absences, they relied on his consistent reliability. Each time he left, he informed them of his plans, stayed in contact, and returned when he said he would. For his family, that trust formed a pattern they believed would never break. But in the summer of 1991, something did break, and what began as another ordinary trip became the starting point of one of Romania's most bewildering mysteries. Vasile had purchased his train ticket, as usual, and departed on what was supposed to be a standard business journey. When he did not return, the first reaction among his family was confusion. Days passed without word, then weeks, and eventually months. The silence was uncharacteristic and alarming. His family contacted the police, hoping for answers, but the investigation turned up no meaningful leads. No witnesses came forward, no signs of foul play appeared, and no evidence explained his disappearance. With time, the grim realization set in that he was gone. As months stretched into years, his family began to mourn him as dead. Memorial services were held, and grief slowly replaced the lingering hope of his return. For 30 years, the family carried the weight of that absence. They imagined his final moments, wondering if they had been violent or accidental, yet never knowing. Then, on August 29, 2021, everything changed. A car pulled up outside his home, and stepping out was none other than Vasile himself, now 93 years old. The sight was as shocking as it was surreal. He was wearing the same clothes he had disappeared in 3 decades earlier. In his pockets were his original train ticket and his identification card from 1991. He carried nothing else, no luggage, no signs of 30 years lived elsewhere. What was perhaps even more unsettling was that he had not arrived on his own. He had been brought there by a vehicle, and the driver sped off before anyone could ask questions or record a license plate number. Family members rushed to greet him, overwhelmed but equally disoriented. On first sight, his son did not even recognize him. Physically, he appeared well, showing no signs of abuse or neglect. Doctors confirmed that he was in good health for a man of his age, aside from minor neurological issues common in the elderly. Yet, what was missing was far more troubling than what was present. He could recall details of his life before 1991 with clarity: his parents, his marriage, his work with cattle. But when it came to the missing 30 years, his mind was blank. He could not remember where he had been, or what had happened during the decades in which his family believed him dead. The emotional reunion was complicated by confusion. He struggled to recognize his 2 children, whose lives had unfolded in his absence. When asked questions, his answers often drifted into fragments about farming, cattle, and the past, without offering clarity about where he had been. His son noted that he did not understand him and described his words as inconsistent and disconnected. The reappearance of Vasile ignited a storm of speculation. Social media and armchair detectives offered theories. Perhaps he had abandoned his family for another life, or perhaps he had been imprisoned for decades, or perhaps he had been kidnapped and forced into labor. None of these explanations could be confirmed, and Vasile himself provided no answers. To this day, his whereabouts between 1991 and 2021 remain completely unknown. What is left is a story without resolution, one of absence, return, and unanswered questions. Among Romania's modern mysteries, the case of Vasile Gorgos stands out as both extraordinary and deeply unsettling. Gabriel Nagy. On January 21, 1987, Gabriel Nagy, an accounting student and father of two, began his day in Sydney, Australia, much like any other. He worked during the day while also pursuing his studies at night, balancing his responsibilities with his role as a husband and father to 9-year-old Jennifer and 11-year-old Stephen. That morning, he phoned his wife Pam and told her he would return home for lunch. Pam prepared a meal, waiting for him to arrive, but Gabriel never walked through the door. What initially seemed like a minor delay soon became the start of a decades-long mystery. By the next day, investigators became directly involved when Gabriel's burned-out car was discovered abandoned. The condition of the vehicle raised immediate alarm. It was not simply left behind. It had been deliberately destroyed, leaving little trace of what had occurred. With Pam filing a missing persons report, the search began. Gabriel was considered a reliable man, punctual, communicative, and dependable. For him to disappear without warning, leaving his family without explanation, was deeply uncharacteristic. In the weeks that followed, missing posters circulated and police searched for leads. The only tangible clue came when records showed Gabriel had withdrawn cash from an ATM in Newcastle, 93 miles away from Sydney. Yet the withdrawal led nowhere. Investigators were unable to connect it to any wider trail. After that, the case grew cold. The family endured the silence, holding on to hope in the early years, but slowly confronting the likelihood that something tragic had occurred. Time stretched on, and 2 years became 5, then 10, then 20. By the mid-2000s, Gabriel had been gone for 2 decades, and legal proceedings were underway to declare him dead. Just before that declaration became official in 2007, one detective decided to give the case a final review. It was this persistence that changed everything. In a database search, she discovered a Medicare record under Gabriel's name. The record led authorities north, to Mackay, nearly 1,000 miles away from where his car had once been found. When investigators arrived, they discovered Gabriel alive, living under the name Ron Sanders. His appearance had aged with time, and his life had taken a dramatically different course. He explained that he had been living under this identity for years, surviving through odd jobs on fishing boats, construction sites, and periods of homelessness. He admitted to using alcohol heavily, relying on it as a way to cope. Most striking was his memory. Gabriel could not recall his past life as a husband and father. He remembered little of his time before his disappearance, except fragments. He recalled being in Newcastle, where his car had been abandoned, and suffering a bleeding head wound. He carried a scar on the back of his head, evidence of an injury that many believe triggered dissociative fugue, a rare psychological disorder involving memory loss and wandering. In Mackay, a local pastor had recently offered him work and a place to stay, giving him stability. It was through this support that Gabriel sought a Medicare card, inadvertently leaving a trail that reconnected him with his old identity. The reunion with his family was emotional and complicated. Investigators provided him with letters written by Pam, his children, and his parents. For Gabriel, reading those words triggered profound emotion. His daughter Jennifer sent him a text message that simply read, "Hi, Dad." He later recalled that it was enough to bring him to tears. Soon after, he spoke with Pam on the phone, their conversation lasting until the battery ran out. Today, Gabriel remains in contact with his wife and grown children, though they do not live together. His case is remembered as one of extraordinary rediscovery, a reminder of how trauma and memory can erase entire lives, only for them to resurface decades later. Mary Louise Day. Mary Louise Day was born in 1968 in Little Falls, New York. Her early life was shaped by instability and neglect. She was the oldest of 3 children, born to Charles and Charlotte Day, but her childhood was disrupted by her mother's inability to care for the children consistently. As a result, Mary and her sisters moved in and out of foster homes. When her parents eventually divorced, Charlotte remarried, taking William Hull as her new husband. The family expanded when Charlotte and William had 2 more children together, and custody arrangements shifted. Mary and her sister Kathy returned to live with their mother and stepfather, while their youngest sister Sherry remained in foster care. The family relocated to Hawaii for William's military service, but tragedy soon struck. Mary's biological father, Charles, died in an accident, leaving the sisters an inheritance that they secretly referred to by the codename Mohawk. In 1980, when Mary was 12 years old, she was removed from Charlotte and William's custody after authorities discovered that William had physically abused her. She remained in Hawaii for a time, but she was later sent back into her mother and stepfather's home when the family moved to Seaside, California. On the night of July 15, 1981, the fragile arrangement collapsed. According to accounts, William attacked Mary physically after accusing her of poisoning his dog. Mary was only 13 years old. By the following morning, she was gone. Unlike many missing children, she was never reported missing by her mother or stepfather. When Kathy asked where Mary was, Charlotte told her simply that Mary had run away and instructed her never to ask again. Years later, Charlotte repeated the same explanation to Sherry, even adding unverified claims that Mary had fallen into drugs and sex work. She admitted to destroying all photographs of her eldest daughter. Within the household, Mary's existence became an unspoken subject, erased by silence and avoidance. It was not until 1994, more than a decade later, that Sherry filed an official missing persons report for her sister. Investigators found a deeply troubling history. Neighbors in Seaside did not remember Mary, and records revealed that she had not been enrolled in school after the family's relocation. Kathy revealed that she had witnessed William's violence toward Mary on the night of her disappearance, recalling that her sister had been bleeding from the mouth. She also described being expelled from the home as a teenager, forced to fend for herself. During interviews, Charlotte and William gave inconsistent statements. Charlotte claimed her husband had reported Mary missing, but no such record existed. William later admitted he had assaulted Mary that night, but denied knowledge of what happened afterward. Investigators grew increasingly suspicious. Cadaver dogs alerted to possible human remains in the family's garden, where a child's shoe was found, though no body was recovered. Later, dogs again signaled at another property where the family had lived, raising speculation that a body may have once been buried and moved. Authorities began preparing a homicide case, suspecting foul play. Then, in 2005, an unexpected development changed the direction of the investigation. During a routine traffic stop in Arizona, police found a woman carrying identification in the name of Mary Day. She was questioned, and she claimed to be the missing girl, now an adult who had run away in 1981 to escape abuse. Investigators were skeptical. She spoke with a heavy Southern accent that Mary had never possessed, and her story lacked details. Still, DNA testing confirmed that she was biologically Charlotte's daughter. The woman reunited with her sisters. Sherry welcomed her into her home in North Carolina, and Kathy also reconnected, though with lingering doubts. Photographs and records eventually confirmed her identity, though questions remained. She had limited memory of her childhood, forgetting details like the inheritance or the code word Mohawk. Suspicion lingered, but evidence showed that she had indeed lived with others after running away, including time with a woman named Marie Kimmel, who provided shelter during the early 1980s. Over time, the doubts faded as investigators closed the case, acknowledging that Mary had survived and returned. Yet the mystery of her lost years never fully disappeared. In 2017, at the age of 49, Mary Day died, leaving behind a story marked by trauma, absence, and unanswered questions. Her disappearance and reappearance remain among the most complex missing person cases in American memory. The stories of Vasile Gorgos, Gabriel Nagy, and Mary Day demonstrate that disappearance does not always lead to permanent absence. In rare and perplexing circumstances, missing individuals return, but instead of bringing complete closure, their reappearance often deepens the mystery. Each of these cases presents questions that remain unanswered, leaving families and investigators suspended between relief and uncertainty. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who love true crime mysteries.